Please note that the information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Hey, welcome to Fertility Ain't Fair, the podcast where we normalize the conversations around infertility, reproductive health, and wellness. I'm your host, Brittany Jackson, here to share laughs, tears, and aha moments as we dive into our wild world with a girl who truly gets it by sharing personal insights from my own experience. Along the way, we're joined by guests who open up about their journeys, the highs, the heartbreaks, and everything in between. So whether you're new to the infertility world, looking for support, or just trying to figure it all out, this is your space to feel seen, heard, and maybe even laugh along the way. Real, raw, unfiltered, because fertility, it ain't fair, but you don't have to face it alone. Welcome back, Fertility Ain't Fair family. It is your host, Brett, and we are getting into a couple of different things with Dr. O, who is also known as Dr. Olymphia O'Neale-White. She is an extraordinary professional dedicated to education, public speaking, and advocacy as a career consultant, teacher, clinician, and she is passionate about cultural inclusion, awareness, competency, all within the social work field. She is also the founder of Through My Lense Consulting LLC, where she brings a number of different things to inspire the next generation of, as she puts it, professional troublemakers. And she also specializes in reproductive mental health. Yes, she is a girl's girl for us. She is dedicated to advancing reproductive education, and she is deeply influenced by her personal journey and experience with infertility and child loss, which you will hear all about in this episode. So, yeah, it's going to be a good one. Another good one, I should say. We're going to tackle her journey, what she went through, how she got herself out of her grief space and out of this cycle of chaos, as she puts it, dealing with infertility and loss, how she has moved into the reproductive mental health space as a provider. And we also have a huge surprise in this episode. Something big happened to her literally before she got on to do this episode. So hear more about that and how that also impacts discussing fertility with people like partners and spouses. And we're also going to get into what National Infertility Awareness Week 2025 means to her. And yeah, so she drops, when I say gems, I mean heavy on the gems in this episode. So make sure you have your notebook, get you some water, grab some tea, whatever you need to lock into this episode of Fertility Ain't Fair. Also, give me your name. Is it Olympia or Olymphia?
Olympia.
Olymphia. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Perfect. I'm going to just do Dr. O, though, for the conversation probably.
That is exactly. Listen, there you go. Listen, and that's how I tell myself, whether it's the first
beautiful.
name,
I don't want
to
degrade your name because it's a beautiful name, but I just like Dr. O is also just cool. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Love
you.
it. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, in 3, 2, and 1. Dr. O, we are here to have a couple conversations, and I'm just so thankful. I'm so glad that we were able to finally connect, because I think I probably reached out to you sometime last year, and you were like, all right, I'm pausing. I need a hiatus on doing all the things end of year. And I was like, so we planned far in advance for this conversation. So here we are. How are you? And welcome.
Oh my goodness. Good morning. Good morning. I am feeling amazing. I'm happy that we could finally connect. It's been a minute. I appreciate even being invited to be in the space and to hold this conversation with you, girl. I'm here for it.
Yes, I'm here for it as well. I thank you again for saying yes to a stranger. I am a slide in your DMs kind of girl when it comes to this.
Oh, that's right.
And I've just been so blessed to have so many of you all say yes. And so, I could do this alone, but I would rather not. And I want to bring as many diverse voices to the space and hold space for people who have stories that are bigger than mine to impact somebody else. So let's just jump on in. My unofficial official icebreaker for all of the guests on this podcast is how do you in this current moment or season of your life define yourself? Any words, phrases you want to give to let us know a little about who you are as we jump into some very personal conversations in a minute.
My goodness. Okay. Well, you know what? How am I defining myself? Y'all, it's Dr. O. For those that know me on a real personal tip, it's just Olympia. I am the founder and executive trainer for my business through my Lens Consulting Services. I am a very proud clinical social worker or therapist. I am a big up Caribbean American woman, and I'm also very much so a reproductive advocate. I guess those would be the things that I use to kind of describe myself in the season of life where I am. I do a lot of different things. Um, Terms, words, advocate, social worker, believer, um, woman. What you mean? And that in itself is a complex term, okay?
Okay.
Um, that in itself, oh gosh, in this season of life, I am journeying towards self as I walk in purpose, and it's something fun to do.
That was very good. That is very good. Okay. It's giving Tabitha Brown-esque energy, and I'm here
Listen,
for
Auntie
it.
Tab, ooh, don't compare me to Auntie Tab like that. Listen, okay?
But it's definitely you. It is you. It is unique, and so thank you for sharing those things. I know that can be for some an off guard kind of like I don't know what to say, and there's no right answer, so you're never wrong. It's about you. So you mentioned being a fertility advocate, infertility advocate, and working in the reproductive health space. And so let's just jump on into that first because I know we're going to get into your work and what you do as a provider, and a couple other things. But I think the root of probably influencing you getting into the mental health space for our community was started by your own journey. And I think that's the perfect place to kind of just start. So if you don't mind, I know it can be a lot to unpack, and it's a lot. Trust me, I know. But can you take us back through parts of your journey that impacted who you are today and kind of what that infertility and loss journey looked like for you?
Ooh, girl, that's real. Okay, yeah, I can definitely walk the line with you. I want to say, mm, early in my 20s is when, I joined with my previous partner. We got married, and we were some of those folks that really wanted to pursue parenthood very quickly. We knew, hey, we did the things, we got the degrees, we did, we've checked those boxes of life, and now it's time to start our family. And while going through that experience, we ended up finding out that I had PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it wreaked complete havoc on my life. Okay. And it was during the good old time of COVID. So it was one of those double whammy. And I remember gaining excessive weight, my period being absent for months at a time. Um, Out of nowhere, I went from being like healthy, good 20s type person to overweight, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic, almost hadn't had a cycle for like a year type person. It was crazy. I couldn't understand. Um, and I remember getting diagnosed, which actually is untraditional, get diagnosed so quickly, um, with PCOS. I got diagnosed, and the doctor kind of gave me the option of, hey, we know you guys are pursuing parenthood. What you want to do? Do you want to move towards doing this, quickly, IVF, IUI, medicated cycles, or do you want to attempt to do this naturally? Naturally, it's not going to be a short road in any way. We elected the quick route. I personally went through 2 rounds of IVF. Um, and so my fertility journey to getting here was inspired by oh, wow. So me too. So this is an experience that is impacting me too. I've done all the things. I've checked the boxes. What people would say, "Oh, okay, like this looks like good mom material." And I realized fertility is a lot more complicated than what grandma and them used to say of you kiss the prince and you gonna end up with a swole belly. And so I went through that experience. We did get pregnant. Sadly, I did lose my son due to a silent miscarriage. And so we continue medicated cycles, but I wasn't really able to conceive moving forward. So with that, I went through a nice little eat, pray, love journey where I really kind of took some time to invest in myself, rediscover myself, redefine a lot of terms that I was used to hearing. Um, by society standards, I got to redefine them myself. So, what does it mean what is fertility? What is motherhood? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a successful woman? Um, what does it mean to be a parent? I got to redefine a lot of those different things on my own terms. And in redefining those things, I realized, oh my goodness, there are a lot of women out here, a lot of men out here, a lot of folks that are struggling with fertility challenges or other reproductive challenges, right? That whew, are really hitting them hard. How do I support them and give them the same love that I was able to reestablish in myself? So that's kind of what led Dr. O to where she at right now.
Wow. Well, first, thank you, because again, I know it's not always easy, but I do appreciate, that more of us are able to share what we have been through, how it has changed us, how it has, right, you mean, redefined or reshaped us. I love that you said that. I heard that recently on another episode that's not out just yet from a woman who went through infertility for several years and ended up without children and decided to move on from that and to say, I'm going to live past this and I'm going to move forward, child free, not by choice. But she really talked about how I had to redefine those definitions, as you mentioned, or redefine milestones, right? Because with children, a lot of times milestones are built into your life. And so now what could that look like if you do not have them, or if it's not the road that you thought it was going to be? So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really important. And I feel like that's in some ways the season that I'm in. And in terms of like, okay, what does life look like? What did I think it was going to look like? What is it, currently looking like? And then how can I be at peace with whatever it is? And that's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard to, kind of have your expectation bubble burst. And you were again so young, right, in your 20s. And so I think people are like, oh, it's always like, oh, you're 20, oh, you're fine. Oh,
Oh,
you're
you have
fine. Oh, you have so much
time.
time. Don't worry
Oh,
about it. Oh, losses are so common, yada yada yada.
hmm.
But it doesn't matter when it happens. It is going to impact you for the rest of your life. And there are beautiful things that I think, as you mentioned, that come out of that though. Did you feel like you had support? Because you mentioned like society's definitions, and I think that is huge. But internally, loved ones, family, friends, did you all have support going through the journey and then also going through your loss? Like, were they aware? Because everyone is until everyone was sometimes happening when it comes to this. So were you open about your journey with your family, or was it different?
Oh my goodness. Yes and no, right? Like, yeah, I would dare to say that one's a little complicated. Like, yes, I was pretty open about my journey just because I guess what was going on at the time, right? COVID-19. On top of that, um, at the time I was partnered with someone who was in the service, and so we were overseas. So it was a very different experience to have because my doctors did not look like me. I wasn't in my own space, I guess, like, just in the country. So that was the connection I had. So it was like I had to share. I couldn't, that isolation was dangerous. So I would try to talk about it. But I definitely had my challenges where, I tried to express what was going on, what was happening. And just like you said, folks were kind of, oh, you're so young. Oh, you guys just, it'll happen when it's meant to happen. Oh, well, losses do happen. Well, maybe it's just not the right time. Well, have you looked at your diet? Well, have you? And so there were certain things that I would disclose to certain folks, and then after getting burned a couple times, there were things I learned to kind of hold a little tightly to myself. So I would share, but it depended on the environment. I think one of the most impactful memories for me was being in the church. I sung in the choir. I was very vested and involved. And I remember someone telling me that maybe it was my lack of prayer or my lack of faith or my lack of engagement with the word, that was kind of impacting. And so at that time, I was young. I always say young and dumb, still had some growing and glowing to do. But just hearing that really kind of hit me hard during that time. And so I kind of felt like, I can share, but I can only share to an extent. But what I realized is when I started sharing, I started realizing how common the issue actually was. I realized, oh, my aunt had children late, not because, she didn't want children early, but because she had four miscarriages before she had a pregnancy successfully. Oh, my cousin's a rainbow baby. Oh, my mom had fibroids. Oh, and you realize how common a lot of these reproductive challenges are that no one talks about, especially in households of color.
I'm nodding and agreeing because first of all, I was about to go to the faith conversation briefly. I want to touch on it because you mentioned that you were a believer and you mentioned faith, and so I thank you for sharing that piece on it because I have had conversations about how again being either raised in the church and being an active member of the church, there have been a lot of hurtful things that have come out of the most the most high people in the church space, and so it's I'm glad that you brought that up. And I hate when I hear it, but as someone who was also raised in a Black Baptist church, and being having to separate, as you mentioned, certain things from it because it does not always feel like the safest space to share certain things. And so, I hope that when we have these conversations, people do not feel like we are condemning, church and people. That's not what it is, right? But it's calling out the fact that I think people need to be more aware, empathetic, educated on, what this is as a medical condition, a medical diagnosis. And, I think those of us who go through it with our faith, people will say, well, oh, like I said, it's not your time, or maybe God's just telling you you're not made to be a mother. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Ooh, yeah, that's what hit hard. And
Yeah.
I think what really made it interesting was the fact that I'm a clinician, so therapy is the job, literally. And in that season, it was a really tough reckoning of this is what it looks like and feels like for some people, and maybe the magnitude is like times 10, because what are their personal values? What are their personal beliefs? What are their cultural implications of their ability to carry a child, have a child, get pregnant to begin with, have that additional child, or what, how does this hit? And it forced me to even start considering men. Like, what is it like to be a guy and struggle with infertility, or struggle with some of these things, and that feeling of being condemned for something that you can't control is mind blowing. And I had to navigate that process during the beginning of my journey. There was periods where I allowed other people to condemn me, and maybe it wasn't even attached to my fertility. I wasn't praying enough. I wasn't eating the right food. I didn't have the right attitude. I thought about it too much. I thought about it too less. My relationship wasn't where it should have been, or whatever the thing was. And then after they stopped condemning me, because I shared only to certain people, I started condemning myself. And I realized that's a vicious cycle that's never ending. Yeah, the blame game can go for years on end. When are you going to exit the cycle of chaos? And once you exit it, what are you going to tell yourself in place of all those ugly things that you were saying? All those things that might not be true.
Yeah.
What are your values now that, you've maybe atoned with not being able to create family in the way you thought, or maybe as quickly as you thought, or redefining those milestones. For me, motherhood no longer, I'm always a mother because I I carried a child. I'm a mom. And even if I didn't carry a child, right? Even if I mother a community, even if I mother family, even if I mother within my profession, I'm known to be a mentor and a leader in social work. So even if I mother within my profession, some of those character traits, some of those actions, a lot of women, or those that have female reproductive organs, identify as mothers, and motherhood doesn't have to be defined by birthing a child or having a live birth. Parenthood doesn't have to be defined by raising a child that is biologically yours. There's a lot of parents out here that's parents to siblings. There's a lot of parents out here that's parents to that little child down the road that needs some guidance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents out here that are parenting young folks that they know have potential in the community or in schools.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parents out here that are elders in communities that see that adult that might need some support and words of wisdom, that are parenting. So getting to redefine these things on our own terms kind of helps folks break that cycle. So that's what I
Yeah.
did myself.
That's good. That's really good. It's an action, right? Like you said, mothering and parenting and nurturing and mentoring. Like these are all actionable things. And like you said, to your point, it may not replace what you thought, you were going to have, but it is still an action that you can take to move forward and still be a part of developing and growing and raising different people along the way. So I think that's super important. um when do you feel like you exited, as you mentioned, that cycle? Like, okay, so I had my loss, and between loss and feeling like, okay, I was able to break out of, as you mentioned, the chaos, how long do you feel like that journey was, if it's not still happening, but if it was something that you have came to peace with, how long was that?
Oh my goodness. For me personally, I will say it took me a couple years to break out of my cycle of chaos. When I lost my son, I was just really lost. Personally, Professionally, I was struggling, and I did the very I tell people that sometimes boundaries and taking a break, taking a knee is one of the most rebellious things you can do as a woman, as a helper, as someone who's in the field of servicing others. I took a knee. I left a very, very prominent job that I had at the time. A lot of folks looked at me like, "What's going on? Hmm." I took a knee, and I focused on self care. I focused on redefining myself. I focused on rediscovering the love I had for myself, and also reestablishing what I wanted life to look like. Um, I knew the cycle of chaos was uncomfortable. I knew it wasn't working. And I also knew that I needed time to sit and absorb the experience I had. So it took some years of therapy, some years of self accountability, some years of grieving, and going through that process. But when I came to, as my grandma would say, is when I came to, it was a beautiful thing because I realized I did birth. I did go through that experience, but because I am a believer, I'll reference God. But because God did intend for me to birth something, but I wasn't meant necessarily to birth my son. I was meant to birth the movement. I was meant to birth resources and opportunity for others to get through this thing. I was meant to birth awareness, and I get to see that kiddo growing up every single day when I do things like this.
I love
When
it. No, I love that, and I say it often, but it's so true that I've been again very fortunate to come across so many, mostly women that I talk to in this space on this podcast therapy is what I call it. And there have been so many of you all who have said just that. I have taken my experience, my pain, my loss, my grief, and I have birthed something new. And it could be a business, it could be a passion project, it could be a resource, it could be a jewelry line, whatever it looks like. But the amount of women that I come across that have literally taken their journey and created something new. And as you mentioned, I'm able to watch that thing grow up and I can nurture it and I can love it. It's just always inspiring to me because someone told me, I've been on this journey for 7 odd years now. It's been a while. And early on, someone told me, this is going to be bigger than a baby for you. And I said, what's bigger than that? That's crazy. Like I was upset. I was defensively, I was mad about it. I was like, how could you say that? How could you approach me like that? And such a very, again, early on in this journey when I was in chaos, all the emotions at once. And a lot of it was very angry and jealous. And a lot of those hard emotions were happening early on for the first couple years, I would say. Um, and someone told me that I was just like devastated. They would even say that to me. But what I keep feeling like God has been showing me and telling me from that point forward in certain spaces has been, yep, bigger than a baby. Yep, I told bigger than a baby. And to your point, doing this and having this platform, has been the birth of that because we saw a need for something. And I also hear that in a lot of them like, hey, I did not have this service or I did not find this resource. So I made it because we're not alone. And so I'm just so appreciative, for you all to be able to share that and continue to inspire others. I know it's not everyone's, journey or path to share their story and speak up and, be the flag carrier and, create a business from it. Right. But I'm grateful that I see it happening a lot more than not. Um, you mentioned, of course, mental health. And one of the things that I think when people hear like IVF or they hear, you know, treatments, they always go to the physical things. Because even if they've never experienced, I think that's what people see most often. So they're like, oh my God, the medications, oh my God, the hormones, oh my God, the needles, the shots. But for me, that was always going to be temporary, right? Like those things were going to start and end however they start and end. But it was not going to be, I was not going to do IVF the rest of my life. And it's just not not feasible. Um, but what I quickly realized was that my mental health and my emotional health and my spiritual walk was going to be forever changed. And
Mm,
um, so I want to kind of jump into the next phase, which is how you have used your experience to specialize in reproductive mental health, because I think that is the piece that truly never leaves you. I mean, even I've talked to a lot of women who have had live children and they have, I say, you know, crossed over to the other side. But one thing they still say is that, you know, I'm never not going to be an infertility person. I'm never not going to be an infertility advocate because that has changed me forever, child or not. So, how have you gone into this space and how has that affected or changed you as a provider, as someone who's able to help others through the unthinkable and the unplannable, quite frankly?
yeah. Man, listen. I always tell folks it's very funny. I pick and poke because people assume that mental health providers don't, you know, have their own struggles or chaos sometimes just because we have the expertise. What did a patient tell me once? We have the answers, you know? And what I often tell them, life is ghetto for everybody. In my personal opinion, adulthood is the worst hood that I've ever lived in. And then up street down the corner is where the real folks live at. That's parenthood. Okay. And I just, when I tell you I felt low. I actually experienced both baby blues. So that 2 week onset, people hear that and they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, even folks that had miscarriages or stillbirths, or yeah, we also are at risk for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders following the completion, whatever that looks like, of a pregnancy. So yeah, I experienced postpartum depression and baby blues, and those things they hit hard. And that attached to that grief really shook me to my core. And I I knew logically as a provider, there's options. There's a way out. There's resources. You just gotta find it. But I remember learning of my son's passing in that office. I went for one of my ultrasounds, just to check up. And I remember sitting in that room by myself after getting the news. They wanted to give me a minute, I guess. And I literally said, I am a social worker. I'm a clinician. Where is my social worker? Where is my person? I need help. And I did not receive it, thankfully, because of my professional background. I knew to go ask for help. I knew to engage folks with specialties. I knew what to do. But after I got out the fog, I was like, oh my goodness, what if someone didn't know? What if I wasn't asked? So it's very possible others aren't being asked either. Um, what do they I know what I needed in that season. Besides the resource, what do they need? And I started asking the question, and people started giving me answers. So I went out of my way to pursue my doctorate. So that's actually what inspired the doctoral journey. My research was on reproductive healthcare challenge and social work or mental health provider education. So, how do I educate providers about this? How do I build up more professional troublemakers in the reproductive space? How do I support us. And I got the perinatal mental health certification through Postpartum Support International. So I am a certified provider, and I just continue to educate, expose myself through different organizations and whatnot. And I see patients with these different experiences and challenges, male, female, or other identifying. Everybody got reproductive organs. So let's talk the reproductive experience. And that's kind of what led me to mental health. I realized it was a specialty that not a lot of providers were engaged in. And, just being a woman of color, not a lot of women of color or even people of color providers operate in this space. We're very far few between. And so I knew there was a need, and inherent social worker, I had to keep it moving and get into it. So that's how I did.
Come on, doctor. Um, oh, that's so good. Oh my God. I again thank you for what you do in the space. I can't say thank you enough again for seeing the need, filling the gaps, closing the gaps, and for just saying, okay, there has to be a better way through this, and I'm going to create that way. Um, one thing that I think I wanted to go back to was so
Please.
you were married when
I
you
was.
experienced okay, at first got diagnosed and had okay. So what happened right before we jumped on our conversation was life changing because Miss Ma'am got engaged.
And she
Okay.
did, y'all.
It's a first to have someone who just got fully engaged, like as part of our time. Okay. So exciting. So obviously you are have moved on to your next relationship, but there was a transition there. And so you went through it with one person. Obviously that relationship ended and you have moved on and found love and are engaged again. And we're super excited for you. But that also now is someone who I'm assuming needs to know all the things about you and is coming into this space, possibly not knowing what you experienced, right? So if you met someone brand new, right? And so I wanted to ask that question as to when you were, let's say, dating, you're now fiance, okay?
It's a
Um,
fiance.
when you were dating, when did the conversation about family and children and past life experience and this would be including infertility and loss, when did that come up and how were you prepared? Were you nervous? Like, what were the feelings that you had? Or maybe you were like, this is what it is, take it, leave it.
Mm.
But what were the feelings that you had? Because that could be, I've heard a woman tell me before that she felt like after she knew that she was not able to have her own children, that she dated down for a long time
Oh.
because she felt like she was not like subconsciously unworthy because she felt like, well, I know I'm not going to be able to give you this. And, in that time frame of being in the childbearing years,
Yeah.
dated multiple men who I probably had no business dating. But she was like, now I could look back. She's in her 50s now and said, I could look back and identify I was dating like this because I felt like I was missing a piece of being a valued or worthy woman, a valued woman. So again, not wanting to bring that, of course, that's her journey, but just saying, how did you feel having to bring that into a new relationship?
It's real. Okay. That's like a real statement. And let me walk through it real quick. We definitely took some time getting here. And honestly, I had the conversation with my partner about my fertility status and kind of the impacts to my diagnosis and different things. I had that conversation with him very early. Um, but I'm just big on disclosure. And I realize that's also a part of me that allows me to sift through the folks I may not need to be dealing with. You feel me? And I'm not gonna sit here and discount, that person's experience at all, because that's real. There's a lot of clients that I see, and I personally experienced it for some time as well, where you do date down, you know, res- respectfully, disrespectfully. You kind of, it's almost like there's a part of you that feels unworthy or undesirable or whatever, because you can't do the thing. So you have to be willing to deal with someone who, you know, may be more accepting of that. And I think boundaries is one of the biggest things to kind of addressing that, um, and kind of setting those boundaries in the relationship early, or with yourself early. What do you want from a relationship? And that's also why it's important to start redefining some of those terms and things. Because if I say I'm unvaluable because I can't achieve motherhood naturally, then how does that interact or impact how I engage the world? you know so with my fiance, we had the conversation very early about my fertility status, about the diagnosis, about how it hits, and we both talked about fears. I was very open and honest about being half past terrified to re-engage fertility treatment again if that time were to come. There was a level of comfort that he gave me by saying, and if we don't, we don't, and if we do, we do, and if you don't want to, we don't have to. And I think for me and my relationship, that worked. Um, for every person, it might be different, right? You might want to re engage fertility treatment, or you might want to pursue parenthood in very non traditional ways. I'm a foster parent also. So, I do foster care. And that's a way that I also nurture parenthood. So it just depends on you, but you have to figure out who you are, where you stand, what your values and beliefs are. After you figure that out, you're able to get into a relationship with someone and be honest about what you need and what you want. When you don't know what you need and what you want or what you value, it makes that relationship that much harder, because you up here serving somebody, a public representative, or you're getting into relationships out of your insecurity and trauma.
Whew, the gems.
It's the gems for me. She said it's the
They're just
gems.
dropping everywhere. I just hope that everyone's listening, stopping, pausing, going back, recording,
Listen,
sharing.
listen.
Listen, because again, as you said, that's real. Knowing your worth, redefining your value points, who you are, and then as you said, knowing what you want and what you will accept or not accept. And I do agree. I feel like, going into this very upfront and very honestly and very, I just said early on, is very beneficial. Again, everyone's different, but I think it's personally, I feel like it's very beneficial because, as you said, you can filter out very quickly those those folk who may not be the right person, and you'll probably know very quickly based off of their reaction or their response or how they show up for you or not show up for you, if that's your person. So yes. Well, congratulations again to you guys. We'll be looking and on the IGs and all the good things to see what's coming up with you guys. But that's super exciting. And we're gonna let y'all go ahead. We're gonna get this wrapped up so that you all can go enjoy this moment of just sheer bliss and excitement. But a couple things. So National Infertility Awareness Week, which is in April every year. For those of you who are new to the space or didn't know it existed, it is a thing. It is here for us and it's year round, but this week in particular, you can look it up NIAW 2025. Go find it on the Resolve website, which is the National Infertility Association. Again, if you are new to our community, welcome, 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 and we got you. So this year it's going to be April 20th through the 26th, and the theme for this year is all in. So, go to the website. It's all about being inclusive and sharing all different kinds of journeys and paths and how to get to whatever the all in looks like for you, and giving you resources and empowerment. So, what is that when you hear like all in for this week, for this cause? What does that mean to you, or what's your initial reaction when you hear that?
Oh my goodness. National Fertility Awareness Week, all in. When I hear it, I immediately think about just what are you investing, not just into others, because sometimes folks get caught up. It's not just about what you can produce for the world, it's about who you are for yourself. Are you all in on you? Right? If you need healing, what does healing look like for you? If you need service and support, what does service and support look like for you? What does love look like for you? What does community look like for you? When we talk about being all in, what does all in look like? Not just for everybody else around you, but most specifically for you. How are you nurturing, feeding, loving yourself? So I think about being all in for Olympia in this season. That's what I think about. And then I think about how does pouring into myself then pour into the communities I serve. When I'm
Whew,
all in, everybody else can get the best.
I love it. I literally wrote that out of my notes because I'm gonna add it to my journal. Just when things come that I hear or that somebody speaks that I align and agree with, I literally just randomly write in my journal. And I was like, one day maybe I'll have a collection of things to put together into something. But until then, I'm gonna add "Are you all in for you" to my journal today. So if people want to know more, tell us a little bit about Through My Lens Consulting, your business, and of course, how they can find you. If people are like, oh my God, I have to speak to her immediately, how
Yo,
can they find you
if
online or
man, listen, if you trying to connect with Dr. O, I ain't too hard to find. You
you're
can
not?
find me on
I can test that as
LinkedIn.
well. Yes.
Yeah, like I'm pretty out here, you know. You can find me on LinkedIn, Olymphia O'Neale-White. You're gonna see me there in yellow, flowers. You might see the white disappear. That's okay, no big deal. Still me. You're gonna know by the yellow photo. Through My Lens Consulting on Instagram, you can find me there. Again, I'm there in yellow, causing chaos. Okay, good stuff. Or you can find me at throughmylensconsultingservices.com. I'm there on that website. If you want to reach out to me directly for therapy, because I know sometimes, I'll be taking on more clients. If you want therapy services and you reside in the states of Arizona, Texas, North Carolina, I might be able to help you out. And if you're not in those states, that's okay, right? Still hit me up. I might be able to connect you with a colleague that can serve you. Shoot me an email at Dr. O'Neale White, Oneale White at gmail.com.
Yes. Well, look, Dr. O, I have appreciated the conversation. I thank you for girl having a life-changing moment and still being like, I'm joining, I'm coming on. I'm just so thankful. I have enjoyed the conversation. I feel filled up by the conversation, and thank you for the work that you continue to do in our space. And we're just looking forward to seeing all of the amazing things that you have coming. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me in this space. It was healing just as much to be here.
So that wraps us up for this episode of Fertility Ain't Fair podcast. Again, Dr. O, I cannot thank you enough for joining this episode, for giving us so much information, so many good gems, to leave us feeling empowered to redefine society norms and redefine definitions of things like motherhood and parenthood, and just finding ways to get through the chaos of what infertility can look like, what child loss and grief can look like, to know that there is things on the other side. And thank you for also being an advocate in our space, and again, for filling a need from knowing what it means to be in the mental health space, but for those of us specifically who are dealing with infertility and loss. So we appreciate you. Make sure you reach out to her again for counseling, for any kind of mental health services, or just to chat. She is a wealth of information and resources, and she is here to help us out. What else? So make sure you listen to any of our past episodes, past seasons, y'all, because we are on season 4. I can't believe it still. If you need more resources, go to Resolve. Resolve is the National Infertility Association organization, and so they have so many resources on their website, both from a national perspective, but also could help you out locally through their different peer-to-peer resource groups and things like that. And they are also the home to all things National Infertility Awareness Week every single year, happening in April. So again, if you are new, you've never experienced it, you didn't know it existed, whatever it is, make sure you check them out and find out all that you can to make sure that you are getting supported properly in this space. We're all here for one another, so we got you. In the meantime, follow us on Instagram at Fertility Fair and tap in with me at any point in time. I am also here to provide resources, connect you with somebody, do some digging for you, or simply vent, because I get it. So until next time, I am your forever friend, and fertility, stay hopeful.